Hello. Okay. Oh, I have to do a shake because I'm nervous. We're going to start with some very gentle audience participation. Sorry, not sorry. Questions for you that I've been asking lots of people over the last couple of years. So first question, I would like you to stand up if you think that, yes, you are a creative person. Almost, but not everyone. Interesting. You can also do hands up as well if you don't feel like standing up. No pressure. Okay. We've got a second question for you. So stay standing if the answer is yes. Sit down if the answer is no. Do you think that your role in content is creative? Okay. A few more people standing up. Super interesting. But still a few people sitting down as well. Third and final question, is creative collaboration something that you and your team are struggling with? Stand up if the answer is yes. Or hands up, yes. Okay, so a few more people rising. Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for presenting a narrative that aligns with the talk I'm about to give, because that would have been super awkward otherwise. And a note, this talk started as a zine, which is why it looks the way it looks. And in the attendee pack, there's a link where you can go and find it online if you're curious to see the whole thing. And as I said, I've been kind of asking these questions about creativity because it's something that I'm super interested in. And I've been kind of storing up and writing down all the words that people tell me that they use to describe content people. And these are some of the things that they say. So good listeners, strategic, analytical, deep thinkers, visionary, thoughtful, bold, focused, curious, and empathetic is one of the ones that comes up the most often. And I really, really love those words. I love what they say about us. But no one says creative, ever. It just never comes up in those conversations. And I'm really curious about why that is. So that's what I'm going to talk about today. And my pitch to you at the beginning, I'm going to lay it all out there right away, is that content design and content strategy, my own discipline, is inherently, essentially, deeply creative. The second thing is that I think creativity and being creative together feeds a really important sense of connection in teams, and it can really help you kind of feel more connected to one another. It can help your work to kind of feel more fun and engaging as well. And finally, that embracing and nurturing creativity is a really important focus for content design leaders. And if you're one of those people who doesn't feel like you're creative or doesn't feel like your role's creative, I really hope I can change your mind as well. But just to introduce myself, and probably why I'm so interested in this topic, I'm a content strategist and also a content designer, and I'm also an incredibly frustrated creative. So it's really funny to hear Rachel say that I'm a creative person because I just don't feel it. I've been frustrated with my creativity since I was about 16, when my school wouldn't let me do A-level art because I wasn't good enough, which, poor me, my poor 16-year-old ego was so bruised by that experience. And then in my first content jobs, kind of going back like 15, 16, actually longer than that, like 18, 19 years now, I guess, I was always on the edge of creative things because I wasn't part of the right team. I was part of content, and then later on, I was part of strategy. And outside work, I am a photographer. I find it very hard to say that because it makes me feel really self-conscious. And I'm an artist, which makes me feel even more self-conscious saying that. But I really deprioritize my creative practice, which gives me loads of angst. I feel really guilty about it. I feel really sad about it. And then I feel critical about it as well. Why can't I do this? So that's enough about me. I also live in a really creative city, Brighton, as well, which is kind of adds to that frustration sometimes as well, that I'm not part of everything that's going on there. But I see this so much in my clients as well. I'm a consultant. I run my own small business, and I work with lots of charities. Some of my clients are in the room today, which is super exciting. And I see this frustration in lots of my clients too. So many people who've got a creative side hustle that they neglect, loads of novels shoved in the back of a drawer, photography, art, pottery, all these cool things that people do. And also just creativity is a massive pain point that comes up when I'm looking at kind of content strategy, when I'm doing discovery. And it's something that I think affects the performance of those teams, but also the kind of joy that those teams feel in their work as well. And I think at the heart of it, there's a real lack of belief in the compatibility of content and creativity. Sometimes it's a sense that you don't need to tap into your creativity, that kind of creative isn't for content design, it's for the designers, it's for the brand folk, it's for the marketers. And sometimes there's a little bit of pride, and to be completely honest, there's some snobbery in this as well. Like, I think a lot of us, to different levels, look down on marketers because they're selling stuff, whereas what we're doing is a lot more noble. And also because, we think that content's elevated because our work is evidence-based, maybe it's closer to a social science. And I think sometimes the limits come from elsewhere as well. Content teams get shut out of creative processes and creative work by stakeholders, by peers, and by really prescriptive briefs a lot of the time as well. And then the final part of it, I think, is that lots of teams just don't know how to create together. They're really locked into reactive working, they're really focused on delivery, really keen to do things by the book as well. And that kind of creates an environment where engaging with a problem creatively feels intimidating or unfamiliar, or like it's actually a bit of a waste of time, not something that you don't really have kind of permission to do. And I think we need to rethink what creativity means, starting with this fundamental principle that I really believe, that everyone and everything is creative. In his book, The Creative Act, Rick Rubin, who, if you don't know him, he's a really incredible music producer behind some of like the best albums of the last, 20, 30, 40 years. He writes that creativity is not a rare ability. It's not difficult to access. Creativity is a fundamental aspect of being human. It's our birthright, and it's for all of us. And there are so many people that don't believe this, that don't see themselves as creative. I think, particularly if you go to school in the UK, maybe other places as well, you can tell me whether you think this is true or not. You're told that creativity is something innate. You're good at art, you're bad at art. There's no kind of grey space in between. And it's not true. Creativity is for all of us. It's a fundamental part of our humanity. And feeling a creative spark, like that can bring so much joy, and it can make work more joyful. And if you want to get like late stage capitalist about it, I think it makes you a more valuable employee as well. And you might want to fight with me about that in the break over coffee, but I do really believe it. There's some kind of companies you work for that will make you feel that that isn't true, but I do think your creativity is a real asset to your employer. So that's about everyone being creative. What about everything? So Kay Tempest, incredible poet, rapper, and performer. He wrote this incredible book on connection, which I wholeheartedly recommend. It's just really kind of incredible, short, slim, beautiful book. He writes, creativity is any act of love, any act of making. It's usually applied to art making, but it can be applied to anything that requires your focus, skill, and ingenuity. And again, like it comes back to this misconception about what creative is. We think it's being good at painting or music or fiction writing. But look at what Kay says. It's about love and making, focus, skill, ingenuity. Those words describe us, everybody in this room, absolutely perfectly. Whether it's spending time turning really complex subject matter into a messaging hierarchy, striving to understand and engage a really difficult stakeholder, like coaching a member of your team through a difficult problem. These things are all creative acts. We just need to kind of really acknowledge that that's what they are. And as a leader, I think there's so much you can do to kind of help promote creativity in your team. And there are two things that I think really will help to kind of bring out that creativity, and they're immersion and connection. So we'll start with immersion, because creativity does thrive when you can feel immersed in what you're doing, when you can focus on the task at hand and really kind of be in that moment. There are a few things that I think, there's some obvious things that make a massive difference to this, like, stuff around kind of finding flow, about having like the right kind of work, the right people in the right jobs, the right level of pressure as well. But I think other things, and like chiming with what Sally was talking about earlier, safety is a huge part of it, but also prioritization and collaboration as well. Sorry, my slides have got stuck. There we go. So people need to feel safe to be creative. It's absolutely essential. And for people in your team, and maybe for you yourself, this might be about developing a belief in your own creativity through giving lots of praise and encouragement and practice. For other people, it's so much about giving permission to fail, and I guess permission not to feel self-conscious about ideas as well. Because if there's risk associated with being creative, with sharing something new, people won't be willing to share that idea. They won't be willing to speak up. So I think one really important thing you can do as a leader is to pattern this. So share your own failures, be vulnerable, talk about things that went wrong, but really emphasize what you learned from it, because that's the part that matters, not the failure. Take risks and be really clear about when you're taking risks. Explain that this thing is risky, but say why you think it's worth taking it. And finally, and this is so important, avoid and shelter people from individual blame when something goes wrong. Blaming somebody doesn't achieve anything. We all know this, but I think the thing that really does help is actually looking at what went wrong in the process and the systems and analysing those things and looking for the lessons that you can learn. The second thing that I think can really help with creating safety and comfort with taking risk and being creative is prioritisation, because while I do believe that anything can be creative, some tasks are definitely better suited to creativity than others. So when you're kind of faced with a piece of work and you're trying to work out whether this is the time to kind of push the boat out and kind of go for it and be creative, take a different approach, kind of ask yourself some questions, triage. Is the goal clear? Because if you don't know what the point of this really is, if the strategy behind it is a bit shaky, it's not worth it. Don't touch it with a barge pole. Think about the level of agency you have, because if this is like in your lane and you have lots of agency, lots of control, it's a really good opportunity. But if you're going to be micromanaged, it's a big waste of time. Like don't waste your effort on it. Think about how high value, how high impact, and I guess how high profile the work is as well, because that kind of affects the level of scrutiny that you're going to get. And if you feel scrutinized, it's maybe not the moment for it. You need to think about the level of challenge. If it's something really easy, that can be a good opportunity for a creative task sometimes, like trying something different because it's familiar. If it's really challenging, if it's something where you feel super uncomfortable, it's so much better to just copy somebody else and learn from somebody who's already solved this problem. And then time is really important as well. If this was due yesterday, it's not the time to kind of go off down a creative rabbit hole. So you're looking for kind of like that magic Goldilocks kind of task where you've got just the right kind of combination of importance, challenge, agency, time, and familiarity with the task. But having said that, you can just be weird as well, and you can go with the vibes. Robert Sutton wrote a book and a paper called Weird Ideas for Managing Creativity. And as part of kind of researching the book, he went out and looked at loads of different workplaces and kind of investigated what helps kind of companies come up with good, innovative solutions. And he found that the best approaches were polar opposites. So in that example I used earlier of like you're solving a problem, for some, the two kind of good ways of doing things. One is you look for somebody who solved the problem before, you learn from them, you copy them a bit. But it also seemed to work really well from his research to actually go and look at people who've never solved the problem before, who know nothing about kind of your marketplace, the problem you're facing, and try and learn from completely different space instead. Then the final thing that I think people need to be immersed is collaborative moments, but I'm going to talk about that more in a moment instead. So the next thing that I want to talk about after immersion is connection, that other really kind of important thing that feeds creativity. And I think in our industry, in tech in particular, and I guess just in the West in general, there's a kind of strong like cultural trope that genius and creativity is a white man working on his own, this idea of the lone genius. But most of those lone geniuses weren't working on their own. Michelangelo did not paint the Sistine Chapel by himself. Picasso was driven by a friendly rivalry with Matisse. Even notorious recluse Emily Dickinson would write poems via correspondence with friends. And under capitalism, under tech bro, we're taught to think about creativity and innovation as being all about individual achievement, technological advancement, novelty. But if you look elsewhere, particularly if you look at indigenous tradition, creativity and innovation are deeply rooted in community, in heritage, in intergenerational transmission of knowledge, and also in coming up with things that benefit the whole society as a collective. And I'm really interested about what would happen if we started to look at creativity that way, as something genius, creativity, a collaborative act, something that benefits us all rather than something that just gets associated with one person. Because creativity doesn't happen when a man is alone in his lab or his study or an office. Creativity is fed by connection. creativity thrives when there's lots of kind of opportunity for people and ideas to mix and bump up against each other and kind of form new connections and combinations. Which brings me around to meetings, believe it or not, meetings. There's a bit on connection where Kay Tempest writes that creative connection is the use of creativity to access and feel connection and get yourself and those with you in the moment into a more connected space. And Kay's writing about performance, but it definitely applies to meetings as well. Creative connection is what we're trying to foster as content leaders, those moments where people can feel immersed and bring their focus, their skill, their ingenuity to bear on a problem. And meetings should be a really important time and opportunity to do that because you've got the people together in the room, you can bring the ideas into the room, you've got space, you've got time. But most meetings don't feel like that, right? Meetings feel like the opposite of a creative space. And I join a lot of meetings as an outsider because I'm a consultant. And the way that a lot of organisations run meetings is really, really bad. There's too many of them. Everybody's like away from their desk all the time, kind of feeling quite stressed by the amount of time in their calendar that's dedicated to meetings. You turn up, there's no agenda, nobody's really facilitating. And there's this kind of magical thinking that if you get people in a room and you just chat a bit, that something's going to happen, and that's not how good meetings work. And meetings and working sessions should be a time and a space where creativity happens. But I think we need to be a bit more demanding of what we're kind of getting ourselves and our teams into. So you have to have an objective, you have to have a reason why you're there, something that will show you that the meeting kind of achieved its goal. You need an agenda, and it has to be more than just like a list of topics to cover. It's a list of specific activities that somebody's sat down and really thought about. How do I facilitate this to kind of get to where we need to get to? Like, what kind of structure of exercise am I going to use? Because unmoderated discussion is hardly ever the right way to do that. You need defined roles. You know, a leader, a facilitator, someone to take notes. You need to know what's expected of participants and let them kind of prepare in advance. And you also need to make sure that you've got the right people in the room, obviously. Comfort is huge as well. Like anything longer than 90 minutes, you definitely need breaks. You should be thinking about like whether people are like, is their energy going to be in the right place? Are they going to be well hydrated? Are they going to be feeling horrible because they're stuck in kind of a stuffy air-conditioned room? Or if it's online, you know, where their eye is going to be getting tired, you need to think about that. And finally, focus. This was like a massive culture shock for me at an earlier point in my career when I kind of went to meetings at organisations where people would look at their phone or their laptop while they were in a room with another person doing something else. That was wild to me. I'd never seen that before, but it seems to be quite normal. And I think a lot of the time it's not that people don't want to give their attention or their focus, it's just that they feel so busy and under so much pressure, and they feel like they don't have the permission to kind of step away from Slack, to step away from email. So that's another thing that I think you need to pattern and set the expectation that if we're in a meeting together, this is where your focus has to be. So that's the kind of people side of it. Next is ideas, because creativity is all about making connections between ideas. You know, you've got to be a magpie. I made most of this deck and like the zine from like little bits of ephemera that I picked up in loads of junk shops around Brighton, because I am like a magpie for useless pieces of paper. Rick Rubin refers to this in The Creative Actor's Source and talks about needing to be taking in kind of new source material all the time to feed your creativity. And that kind of source material can come from anywhere. It should be intersectional, it should be interdisciplinary. And Jean-Michel Basquiat, the incredible artist, said that his inspiration came from real life, books and television. And I think it's so perfect. It's just about being interested in the world around you and being able to make kind of connections between things that seem kind of unrelated. And again, like as a leader, that's part of your role, is to kind of create that conduit for ideas and inspiration and source. Like send people articles to read, have a library of books, go to conferences like this one and kind of take in all of those new ideas. Or one of my clients was telling me the other day that they sometimes kind of stage their meeting around field trips. So they'll go to a museum, they'll get a meeting room there and they'll kind of tour the collections, and it just completely changes their kind of approach to working together, having like all of that source material there in front of them. I talk about Rick Rubin a lot, I can't help it. But I really, like when I watched this interview that he did with Anderson Cooper for 60 Minutes, I was just really like taken aback by this. So he's saying, like, I have no technical ability, I know nothing about music. And like this guy, he's like the biggest, most successful music producer in the world. He's worked with everyone. Adele, Beastie Boys, K Tempest as well, like made one of his best albums together. Yeah, and Anderson Cooper kind of pushes him on this, and he says, well, I know what I like and what I don't like, and I'm decisive about what I like and what I don't like. And then when he's pushed again and asked to kind of defend himself, say what he's being paid for, he says, the confidence that I have in my taste and my ability to express what I feel has proven helpful for artists. And like, on the one hand, the absolute audacity, like, can you imagine turning up for a content design job interview and being like, yeah, I have no technical ability. Like, I don't know anything about content design, but I've got great taste. Like, yeah, like it doesn't directly translate, but there is something so important that we can learn from this. You know, he's been able to make some of the most talented, diverse kind of musical artists make these kind of career and actually culture-defining kind of creative transitions, not through being a musician, not through being kind of really good at technical production, but through taste and communication skills. Like, the communication part of it is really important. And something I see all the time is people holding themselves back at work because they're waiting for an expert to show up and tell them how it's done. Somebody who's got some like mystical source of craft expertise and experience who's going to be like, this is the right way to do this. That person doesn't exist. I think somebody said this morning, we're all just making it up as we go along. That mystical person is not coming, and you're right here. Like, this is for you to do. You can do this. You just need to have a bit more audacity, be a bit more Rick Rubin. Trust in your taste and your ability to communicate what's good to the people you work with. It's our role as leaders to kind of develop our taste, our ability to be decisive, to give that really good feedback to people when they need it, because that's what helps them kind of thrive in their role. That's what helps them to become a better content designer. So, you know, you should be a curator of the source material, a tastemaker, critical friend who can boost people's creative ability and experience. And this brings me around to a bit of an elephant in the room, best practice. So I have a really kind of difficult relationship with best practice because on the one hand, it's one of the best things about content design is the fact that we've kind of built this community, that people have shared best practice, that they've shared all of their learnings. And you know, it's been an amazing thing that we've been able to build the field around. But sometimes I think it really weighs us down as well. Rigidly sticking to best practice feels exhausting. And I know that for so many teams out there, doing content design like it's written in the book or like it's taught in the boot camp, that just doesn't stand up to the reality of their organization. You can't do it. And it can make you feel like a real failure that you can't do it the way that you think it's supposed to be done. And I think some people like to police each other on it quite a lot as well. You know, you see some like hot takes on LinkedIn about how so-and-so does their buttons or how so-and-so wrote this error message, which is really unhelpful because you don't have the full context for why somebody made that decision. And they're probably just doing their best. We're all doing our best. Thank you. And we should be able to experiment. We should be encouraging each other to try something different. Yeah. Rick Rubin, again, I really love this guy. He writes that rules direct us to average behaviours. Average is nothing to aspire to. And that's it. Like, your goal isn't to mimic or copy what's good. It's to learn from it, use it as a yardstick, and then push it further. Like, take all those books, the articles, the boot camps, the conference talks, learn from them, but don't be afraid to kind of leave them behind and deviate from what they've taught you. Craft and creativity aren't mutually exclusive. Like, you can combine these two things. They're very happy together. And the last thing I'll say is this: best practice has to start somewhere, and there's absolutely no reason why it can't start with you, your team, your creativity, and pushing yourself to do something different. Thank you very much.